1109 local, Strait of Hormuz, 16 nautical miles northeast of Musandam Peninsula, 21 nautical miles from the Iranian coast. International waters at the narrowest functional point of the strait, the shipping channel compressed by geography into a transit corridor where every vessel is visible to every other vessel, and where the 8-kilometer depth of the fairway left almost no room for evasive maneuvering without grounding risk. The morning was clear, visibility unrestricted, sea state flat. USS Nitze, DDG-94, Arleigh Burke-class destroyer, was operating in company with USNS Cesar Chavez, TAKE-14, a Lewis and Clark-class dry cargo and ammunition ship of the Military Sea Lift Command. The two-vessel transit was northbound through the strait. Nitze 1.8 nautical miles ahead of Cesar Chavez on a protective screen position. Standard MS Sea Convoy escort geometry. They had entered the strait from the Gulf of Oman at 9:44 and were on schedule to clear the northern end at 12:30. USNS Cesar Chavez was not a warship. It carried no weapons, no combat systems, no point defense capability. Its crew of 123 were civilian mariners, U.S. Merchant Marine, contracted to MSC. The ship was 210 meters long, 32,000 tons loaded, and at this moment carrying 900,000 gallons of JP-5 aviation fuel, 4,400 tons of dry cargo including munitions components, and 22,000 gallons of marine diesel. The resupply load for USS Abraham Lincoln's carrier strike group, which had been operating in the Gulf for 14 days, and whose aviation operations tempo had pushed its fuel state to 31% of capacity. The Lincoln needed what was on Cesar Chavez. It needed it within the next 72 hours. The IRGC planning cell had known this. The intelligence picture that had produced the operation was not derived from stolen signals or satellite penetration. It was derived from pattern analysis of AIS data. The ship identification transmissions that USNS Cesar Chavez broadcast continuously as a non-combatant vessel under international maritime law. An AIS track combined with publicly available information on carrier strike group fuel consumption rates and a 14-day operational tempo produced a supply timeline accurate to within 18 hours. The planning cell did not need classified intelligence to know that Cesar Chavez was the logistics fulcrum of the Lincoln Strike Group's continued operations. Commercial data analysis was sufficient. A carrier strike group that had exhausted its aviation fuel could not fly. A carrier that could not fly was a 100,000-ton platform that could not contribute to the defense of the strait or the region. The target was not a warship. The target was the warship's ability to operate. The contact picture for Nitze at 11:09 was dense with commercial traffic. 14 vessels in various stages of strait transit. 3. IRGC Navy patrol boats were operating 12 nautical miles northeast in Iranian territorial waters, consistent with observation posture. A planned commercial vessel was transiting southbound in the opposing lane 4.1 nautical miles to port. Standard Hormuz picture. At 11:11:04, the SLQ-32 aboard Nitze registered a new emission cluster. Frequency hopping radio in the Arash-2 coordination band, bearing 028 northeast from inside Iranian territorial waters. The emission profile was consistent with the swarm coordination signature that the fleet's threat library had been updated to recognize after the USS Roosevelt engagement 3 months earlier. At 11:11:12, 8 seconds after the emission, the SPY-1D acquired 19 new contacts, all bearing 028, altitude 40 to 80 meters, speed 130 kilometers per hour, all inbound. Arash-2 FPV drones. 19 contacts. At 11:11:13, 1 second later, the SPY-1D acquired 2 additional tracks. Different bearing, 031, range 38 nautical miles. Different profile. Not drones. Velocity Mach 0.9, altitude sea skimming, emission signature consistent with Noor anti-ship cruise missile active seeker. Both tracks bearing not toward Nitze, towards Cesar Chavez. The TAO called General Quarters at 11:11:16, 4 seconds from first track to alarm. The engagement architecture was the most operationally deliberate the IRGC had yet deployed in the Strait. 19 Arash-2 drones as the primary engagement on Nitze, designed to consume CIWS and ESSM capacity, drawing Nitze's engagement resources toward the drone tracks bearing 028. 2 Noor missiles bearing 031, aimed not at the warship but at the unarmed logistics vessel 1.8 nautical miles behind it. The geometry was precise. The drones arrived from a 3-degree offset bearing from the missiles, requiring the Aegis fire control system to manage 2 separate threat axes simultaneously. 19 drone contacts on axis 1, 2 Noor missiles on axis 2, 1 ship with defensive systems, 1 ship without any. Nitze's CIWS systems, forward and aft, were oriented by the Aegis engagement system toward the primary drone threat bearing 028. The SM-6 rounds were designated against the Noor tracks bearing 031. The engagement split was the only operationally coherent option. ESSM rounds 1 through 8 away at 11:11:28 against the lead drone formation. 4 dual rail launches. SM-6 rounds 1 and 2 away at 11:11:33 against Noor track Alpha. SM-6 rounds 3 and 4 away at 11:11:38 against Noor track Bravo. CIWS forward engaging drone contacts at 11:11:41. The drones came in 2 waves. The first wave of 11 had a 4-minute flight time. The second wave of 8 had been staggered 30 seconds behind, designed to arrive as the CIWS was in reload or transition. The ESSM rounds neutralized 6 of the first 11. The forward CIWS engaged the remaining 5 contacts at close range. 247 rounds expended, 4 of 5 neutralized. 1 Arash-2 impacted the weather deck forward of the 5-inch gun mount at 11:13:09. The 6-kilogram shaped charge detonated against the deck plating. Non-critical. The deck plate was perforated. Superficial structural damage. No system impact. Debris and fragmentation across the forward deck. The second drone wave arrived at 11:13:39. CIWS aft engaged 6 of 8 contacts. 2 ESSMs expended against the remaining 2. Both ESSM intercepts confirmed. Second wave, neutralized entirely. 19 drones. 1 impact. Superficial weather deck damage. The Noor missiles were 2 minutes from Cesar Chavez. SM-6 round 1 reached Noor track Alpha at 11:13:51 at 22 nautical miles. Mid-course intercept. Alpha. Neutralized. Noor track Bravo was the one the planning cell had designed the entire operation around. SM-6 round 3 reached track Bravo at 11:13:58, 7 seconds after the Alpha intercept. The round's active seeker acquired the Noor at 18 nautical miles. Engagement geometry was complicated by one factor. Cesar Chavez was 1.8 nautical miles behind Nitze on the same general bearing as the Noor's approach track. The SM-6's engagement solution placed the intercept between Nitze and Cesar Chavez. The Noor's approach axis passed through the corridor between the 2 ships before reaching Cesar Chavez. The intercept point at 18 nautical miles was well clear of that corridor. The SM-6 detonated. The Noor's guidance section was fragmented by the SM-6 warhead. The warhead section, intact, continued on last computed heading. Unlike the C-802 scenario 3 months earlier, the Noor's warhead section was not tumbling. Its aerodynamics were more stable in separation than the C-802's had been. It was flying, unpowered, on a ballistic arc that the SPY-1D was tracking with precision. The arc terminated at Cesar Chavez. The Noor's 165-kilogram warhead impacted USNS Cesar Chavez's starboard side at frame 84, deck level 3, at 11:14:19. Not a guidance intact impact at full velocity. A separated warhead section at reduced velocity, approximately Mach 0.7 at point of impact, compared to Mach 0.9 for a fully functional terminal engagement. The warhead initiated on contact. The detonation at frame 84 propagated through the cargo space adjacent to the aviation fuel transfer manifold. The JP-5 in the transfer piping did not detonate. JP-5 requires an ignition source above its flashpoint. and the initial detonation was brief and directional rather than sustained. What the warhead's blast energy did was rupture the transfer manifold and spray atomized JP-5 across a 14-meter section of the cargo hold interior. The atomized fuel found the ignition source it needed in the secondary electrical sparking from a ruptured junction box, 4 meters from the initial breach point. A JP-5 fire started at 11:14:22, 3 seconds after impact. JP-5 burns. It does not detonate in a single catastrophic event. This distinction was the margin between a serious fire aboard a logistics ship and a total loss. 900,000 gallons of aviation fuel burning in a contained cargo hold is a serious fire. It is survivable. The ship's CO2 flooding system activated automatically at 11:14:24, suppressing the fire in the manifold section within 41 seconds. What the CO2 did not suppress was the secondary fire in the cargo hold insulation and structural materials that the atomized JP-5 had coated before igniting. That fire required manual intervention. Cesar Chavez's civilian crew had trained for fire scenarios. They had not trained for a fire that began with a warhead impact. The ship's fire response teams were at their stations within 90 seconds, working in smoke, in a hold that was venting heat from burning insulation, with AFFF portable systems and a fire main that was fully pressurized and undamaged. The fire was controlled at 11:21:44, 7 minutes and 25 seconds after impact. Contained, not extinguished. The fire smoldered in the cargo hold insulation for an additional 41 minutes before being fully extinguished at 12:03. The structural assessment at 11:23:00. Hull breach at frame 84. Starboard side, 1.4 meters by 0.9 meters above the waterline. No flooding. The aviation fuel transfer manifold was rendered inoperable. The ruptured section and the contaminated adjacent piping requiring full replacement before any JP-5 transfer operations could resume. Of the 900,000 gallons of JP-5 aboard, approximately 18,000 gallons had been contaminated by fire suppression agent and were no longer suitable for aircraft use. The remaining 882,000 gallons were assessed as intact in undamaged tanks. The ship could still deliver 882,000 gallons to the Lincoln. It could not do so through its normal transfer manifold. Emergency transfer protocols using portable pumping equipment would extend the at-sea replenishment timeline from a standard 6 hours to an estimated 22 hours. The Lincoln's aviation operations had to be suspended pending fuel resupply. A carrier that could not operate its aircraft for 22 hours in a contested strait environment was exactly what the IRGC planning cell had intended to create. The Noor warhead had cost $500,000. The operational effect it had produced: 22 hours of Lincoln aviation suspension, the degradation of the strait's air coverage, the strategic gap in carrier strike group capability, was assessed at a value that no dollar figure adequately captured. Nitze's TAO had one additional problem. The drone engagement had consumed both CIWS magazines, 1,550 rounds each, combined 3,100 rounds, dry at 11:13:54. Reload was in progress. Estimated time to full magazine: 19 minutes. For 19 minutes, Nitze's close-in defense against another drone wave or sea-skimming missile was degraded to ESSM only. The captain of Nitze reported to 5th Fleet at 11:25:33. The report documented both the tactical engagement and its strategic consequence. Cesar Chavez was operational, but the aviation fuel transfer manifold was inoperable. Lincoln's aviation operations were suspended, and the CIWS reload was 7 minutes from completion. Two-phase IRGC operation confirmed. Drones to drain CIWS, then Noor targeted at the logistics vessel rather than the warship. Ship and crew status: Nitze fully operational. Cesar Chavez hull breach contained. No personnel critically affected. Requesting authorization for response. Authorization at 11:31:44. 6 minutes and 11 seconds after the report. The target package reflected the operation's full architecture. Site Alpha, the Noor launch battery. Iranian coast bearing 031 from the engagement position. Fixed installation assessed from pre-engagement NRO imagery. Coordinates in the target database. Site Bravo. The Arash-2 drone launch facility and ground control compound. Bearing 028, assessed inland position 9 kilometers from the coast. Same facility type as the network targeted after the Roosevelt engagement. Rebuilt or reconstituted, now active again. Site Charlie. The IRGC Navy. Command and coordination node at Bandar Abbas. Assessed as having authorized and coordinated the two-phase operation. Site Delta. A second Noor battery position 14 nautical miles east of Site Alpha. Assessed from NRO imagery as a reload-capable installation. It had not fired, but its presence indicated a planned follow-on engagement capability. Site Echo. The AIS Monitoring and Commercial Data Analysis Facility at Bandar Abbas Port. Assessed as the intelligence node that had produced the Cesar Chavez targeting data from commercial ship tracking analysis. A facility whose function was to convert publicly available shipping data into operational targeting packages, was not a conventional military target. It was the one that had made this specific engagement possible. USS Laboon, DDG-58, was 98 nautical miles south. Tomahawk launch authorization received at 11:32. USS Vicksburg, CG-69, was 140 nautical miles southwest. Authorization received simultaneously. Carrier Strike Group. USS Abraham Lincoln, CVN-72, received air wing launch authorization at 11:33. With the specific note that Lincoln's aviation operations were to launch the strike wave from its remaining fuel reserves, accepting further depletion against the strategic requirement to respond before any follow-on IRGC engagement could be prepared. T+0, Noor impact on Cesar Chavez, 11:14. T+17 minutes, authorization, 11:31. T+19 minutes, first Tomahawk, USS Laboon, 11:33. T+24 minutes, first F/A, 18E/F. Wheels up from Lincoln, 11:38. T+37 minutes, first Tomahawk impacts Site Alpha, 11:51. T+72 minutes, F/A-18 first wave weapons release, 12:26. First Tomahawk, USS Laboon, 11:33. Cost, $1.87 million. Target, Site Alpha, Noor Battery. Running cost, $1.87 million. Tomahawks 2 through 5. Site Alpha, launcher structure, fire control radar shelter, propellant storage, crew and operations shelter. Running cost, $9.4 million. Tomahawks 6 through 9. Site Bravo, drone facility, 4 rounds. Ground control station, launcher infrastructure, power supply, antenna arrays. Running cost, $16.8 million. Tomahawks 10 through 13. Site Delta, second Noor battery, 4 rounds. Running cost, $24.2 million. Tomahawks 14 and 15. Site Echo, AIS monitoring facility, 2 rounds. Running cost, $28.0 million. Tomahawk 16. Site Charlie, Bandar Abbas coordination node, 1 round on the operations annex. Running cost, $29.9 million. At 11:51, 37 minutes after the warhead impacted Cesar Chavez, the first Tomahawk reached Site Alpha. Direct impact on the launch rail structure. Round 2 on the fire control radar shelter 9 seconds later. Round 3 on propellant storage. Secondary event, thermal bloom on the MQ-9 Reaper feed sustained for 61 seconds. The Noor battery that had fired at an unarmed logistics vessel was confirmed eliminated at 11:52:18. Running cost at this point, $9.4 million. Site Alpha assessed replacement value, $290 million, 5 to 7 years to reconstitute under sanctions. The Noor that had reached Cesar Chavez had cost approximately $500,000. The battery that fired it, $290 million to replace. 11:56, Site Bravo, Drone facility. All 4 rounds confirmed on target. The ground control station and launcher infrastructure confirmed inoperable on Reaper imagery at 11:57:41. The drone network that had emptied Nitze's CIWS magazines was eliminated. 12:01. Site Delta. Second Noor battery. 3 of 4 rounds confirmed on target. The 4th round, designated against the access road approach, impacted a coastal embankment 140 meters short of the road surface. Road access to Site Delta was not denied. First fog element. 12:04. Site Echo. AIS monitoring facility. Both Tomahawks on target. The facility confirmed inoperable at 12:04:44. The commercial data analysis capability that had produced the Cesar Chavez targeting solution no longer existed. Whether the operational methodology, the pattern analysis technique itself, had been documented and distributed to other facilities before the strike was assessed as probable, but unconfirmed. Second fog element. 12:06. Site Charlie. Bandar Abbas Coordination Annex. 1 Tomahawk. Confirmed on target. The Operations Annex confirmed inoperable. Personnel disposition unconfirmed. The FA-18 Wave from Lincoln arrived at weapons release range at 12:26. Lincoln had launched its strike from fuel reserves that had been at 31% before the engagement. The strike further depleted the carrier's aviation fuel state to 22%. The strike was necessary. It was expensive in fuel that the ship did not have to spare. 8 JSOW munitions against coastal radar installations, providing over-the-horizon targeting coverage for the Strait's northern approach. 6 of 8 confirmed impacts. Both primary radar installations confirmed neutralized. 1 JSOW impacted a secondary structure adjacent to its designated radar, rather than the radar itself. Radar undamaged. Third fog element. At 13:14, all F/A-18 formations recovered to Lincoln. The Cesar Chavez emergency transfer protocol began at 13:30. Estimated completion, 11:30 the following morning. 22 hours of portable pump transfer using emergency procedures. Lincoln's aviation operations resumed at 11:44 the following morning. The accounting, IRGC investment. 19 Arash-2 drones at $8,000 each, $152,000. 2 Noor missiles at $500,000 each, $1 million. Operation coordination and logistics, estimated $400,000. Total, $1.55 million. Damage achieved. USNS Cesar Chavez. Hull breach at frame 84. Transfer manifold inoperable. 18,000 gallons. JP5 contaminated. Forward cargo hold fire suppressed. Estimated repair cost, $14 million, 31 days. Operational effect. Lincoln aviation operations suspended for 22 hours during active Strait operations. Nitze. Weather deck forward. Superficial damage from Arash-2 impact, $110,000 repair. No operational degradation. Both CIWS magazines expended and reloaded. The IRGC had achieved $14 million in physical damage to Cesar Chavez. They had achieved something harder to quantify in the 22 hours of Lincoln's aviation suspension during contested Strait conditions. The $1.55 million operation had produced a strategic effect, a temporary but real gap in carrier aviation coverage, that no previous single missile in the Strait had produced. U.S. response cost, 16 Tomahawks at $1.87 million, $29.9 million, 8 F/A, 18 E/F sorties from Lincoln at fuel cost against depleted reserves, assessed at elevated operational cost, $9.6 million, 2 MQ-9 Reaper sorties, $0.8 million, total, $40.3 million. Adversary infrastructure removed. Site Alpha. Noor battery confirmed neutralized. Site Bravo drone facility confirmed neutralized. Site Delta second battery severely degraded. Road access undenied. Site Echo. AIS targeting facility confirmed neutralized. Site Charlie operations annex confirmed neutralized. Coastal radar. 2 of 3 designated installations neutralized. The IRGC planning cell's concept was the most strategically sophisticated operation reviewed in this engagement series. The recognition that a carrier strike group's logistics tail, its fuel supply chain, was more vulnerable and more strategically valuable than the warship escorting it represented a genuine doctrinal insight. Sinking an R. Lee Burke-class destroyer is tactically significant. Suspending a carrier's aviation operations for 22 hours in a contested strait is strategically significant. The IRGC had correctly identified which target produced the greater strategic effect per dollar invested. Their mistake was in the terminal guidance chain. The SM-6 intercept of Noor Bravo at 18 nautical miles had been a valid intercept. The warhead separation that followed was the same vulnerability that had produced proximity detonations in earlier engagements. The planning cell's model, if Noor reaches Cesar Chavez, Cesar Chavez burns, had not accounted for a separated warhead at Mach 0.7 rather than a guided missile at Mach 0.9. The reduced velocity meant the warhead's initiation energy was lower. The fire started. The ship survived. The difference between a contained cargo hold fire and a catastrophic fuel ship loss at Mach 0.7 versus Mach 0.9, one had an outcome the crew could fight. The other did not. The ship's civilian fire response teams fought it. They had 7 minutes and 25 seconds to control a fire that, under different circumstances, would not have been controllable. USS Nitze, DDG-94. Weather deck superficial damage from Arash-2 impact, $110,000. No operational degradation. Both CIWS reloaded. All systems nominal. SM-6 inventory. 20 of 24 remaining. USNS Cesar Chavez, TAKE 14. Hull breach frame 84. Starboard 1.4 meters by 0.9 meters above waterline. Patched. Transfer manifold inoperable. 18,000 gallons. JP5 contaminated of 900,000 total. Fire suppressed in 7 minutes 25 seconds. Repair. $14 million. 31 days. Ship operational under emergency transfer protocol. USS Laboon, DDG-58. No damage. 12 Tomahawks expended. USS Vicksburg, CG-69. No damage. 4 Tomahawks expended. USS Abraham Lincoln, CVN-72. 8F/A, 18E/F sorties. Aviation ops suspended 22 hours. Fuel state at strike completion, 22%. Emergency resupply completed 11:44 following day. Total U.S. response cost, $40.3 million. Adversary, Alpha, Noor battery, confirmed neutralized. Bravo, drone facility, confirmed neutralized. Charlie, coordination annex, confirmed neutralized. Delta, second battery degraded, road access undenied. Echo, AIS targeting facility, confirmed neutralized. Coastal radar, 2 of 3 neutralized. U.S. execution. Gaps. Site Delta road access survived Tomahawk anomaly. Site Echo methodology possibly distributed before strike. Third radar installation survived JSOW impact on adjacent structure. Personnel disposition at Charlie unconfirmed. 37 minutes from warhead impact to first Tomahawk on the battery that fired it. 22 hours of Lincoln aviation suspension from a $500,000 Noor warhead section, traveling at Mach 0.7. The IRGC spent $1.55 million and temporarily removed a carrier air wing from strait operations. That exchange ratio, $1.55 million achieving 22 hours of carrier aviation suspension in a contested strait, is the most operationally efficient result in this engagement record. It was not enough. The fire was controlled. The ship survived. The carrier resumed operations. The Noor battery and the drone facility and the AIS analysis node are gone. The strait is open. The Lincoln is refueled. The next Cesar Chavez transit through the strait has additional defensive provisions that did not exist before 11/14 on this date. That is the other accounting entry. the one that costs nothing to add to the record and changes everything about the next convoy.